vehicles got repossessed and basically down to like gym bags. And
Yeah.
that's when we like pretty much hit rock bottom, I would say. And
Yeah.
and looking back on it now, rock bottom, it wasn't that bad. Like the only thing that sucked was losing cash. The house, the
Yeah.
cars, all the other stuff, it didn't even matter.
Welcome to episode number 7 of the T-Mac Impact Show. Today was really special for me. I got to have an interview with my friend Mike Hyde. Mike Hyde is a real estate agent as well over in Missoula, Montana. But what makes his story so unique and inspiring is he went through a battle with cancer back in the mid 2000s with one of his sons named Cash. And there's a huge story behind all of that we dive into. And I definitely think it's something that will be eye-opening for you with some of the lessons that he learned. And I chewed up a little bit. I did have a Kleenex on the side just in case, but it was a very encouraging story for me to hear. And not only that, but like within the acronym of what I have impact standing for is perseverance. Mike, it's philanthropic as P, but perseverance is another one that I could add in there. And especially for Mike. Mike had the battle with his son. He's lost everything. He broke his back and has gotten a home foreclosed on, been in a lot of hard spots, and he's bounced back and is making an effect right now on a lot of people's lives, not only here in America, but over in the Philippines where he employs people as well. It's really cool, and I believe that you will be entertained and encouraged and inspired by today's episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so every time one of these inspiring stories comes out, you can go ahead and watch it and take something away that you can go and make the world a better place with. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, anywhere else that streams podcasts, it would really mean a lot to me if you leave a 5-star review. The mission of this podcast is sharing impactful stories to inspire growth. So I know that ultimately is going to make the world a better place and encourage people to go be helpful to others. And it's not going to get out there unless it gets shared with other people, grassroots style. So if you leave a review, it helps pop in front of more people. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did having it. Obviously, you and I know each other, and we've been friends now for a while. We're in the real estate business. You're over there in Missoula, and I'm here in Bozeman. We'll let them argue in the comments over which one is better, but we know Bozeman comes out on top. Yeah. But I did want to ask you. We'll touch on a little bit of real estate stuff later, but I did want to ask where is it that you grew up, and what was your childhood like as you were growing up before you had a family or anything like that?
You know, I grew up right here in Missoula, Montana, in the lower Blackfoot area. We moved to Montana in like 1994, and so I've been in Western Montana ever since.
Really? Okay. And where was it that you guys moved from in 94?
I was born and raised like in Salt Lake City area.
Okay.
Like actually, it was like Utah County area until we were about 9 years old, and then we
Yep.
moved up here. We still have a lot of family down in Utah, actually, and we came to Montana and never left.
Okay, that's awesome. And how old were you when you met your wife?
You know, my wife and I met back when we were in our last years of high school. She was a senior. I was a junior. I was 17. She was 18. And we started dating. Gosh, we're talking 2001 era.
Really?
Yeah.
So you must have had some game if you were with a senior when you're only a junior.
Coffees for closers, T-Mac.
That's awesome. Coffees for closers. Well, obviously you're still closing on stuff today because you've built up to some success. We'll get into that here in a little bit. So you guys met in high school sweethearts. How long then was it until you guys ended up getting married or taking things a bit more seriously?
we were dating. She was going to college. I'd been out of high school about a year, and I started my first car lot back in like 2002 era.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was running a car lot. It was right during the Iraqi Freedom War, is when we were in Spokane buying vehicles. We could see like the jets taking off, and that was my first experience of a market shift as a young entrepreneur. And I was in the automotive industry, and so that was '03.
Really?
And then in 2004, my wife was in her second year of college at that time, and that's when she told me she was pregnant with my oldest son Colton. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was 20 years old when he was born, and we started our family super young. It wasn't planned, and it kind of defined my direction that I went from that point forward as a young family versus just being a young 20-year-old doing what I wanted.
Yeah. Okay. So if you guys were pursuing each other fairly seriously, it sounded like, but there wasn't kids involved, what would have you said that the purpose maybe of your life or marriage was before kids got introduced, and how did that change once a family did come along?
Well, you figure before we had a kid, we were just kids ourselves, and we weren't married. We were. She was just in her first years of being in nursing school, and I was fresh out of high school, wanting to run a car dealership was my plan. And so when we had a kid, it changed our priorities because at that point I had to go get a real job, and that way she could continue going to college because she still had a couple years left. So at that time, my main goal was to make sure that I could provide for my new kid and make sure that Callie could get through college, so it didn't affect her future becoming a nurse, because that was important to her. And so I guess my the biggest change would be just having to make sacrifices on stuff that I wanted for the other people in my life that I cared about. So it was more of a responsibility growth like exchange for me at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And for her it was about learning how to become a mom and go to school full time, and she was working still as well. So I mean, we were
Wow.
busy young 20-year-olds.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I got married in June of 21, and I just turned 27, and people always ask, they're like, "Hey, Taylor, Kendra, are you guys having kids?" And my answer is always, "No, we're just practicing for now, but we will have kids soon enough." I can't imagine being 20 years old and with college, job, now having to raise a family. Yeah, you must have learned quite a bit in that period of time.
Practicing's fun, man. Like my son's 18 now, so he'll be 19 in
Yeah,
September. He's older than I was when I met his mom, which just blows my
really.
mind when I look back and I'm like, oh man, like I have this young adult that, like, I if he made the same decisions that I was making at his age, I mean, he could be changing diapers pretty quick here.
Yeah, it's so funny that I always think about that because my little brother, he's what? I think he's 24. No, I think he's 25. He'll be 25. Alec, but it's so funny like when you're, throughout high school and then you're 21, whatever, and how old you think you are. And then you fast forward a couple years and look back, you're like, I didn't know anything at that point in my life.
Dude, 40-year-olds used to be the old dudes, and now I'm gonna be 40 this year, and I'm like, it's just another chapter in my life, I guess, as I transition out of my 30s now and into my 40s, and I get to watch, like, a lot of my friends are just barely having kids now, like in their
Hmm.
late 30s, and I'm thankful that I already have all my diapers out of the way, and I get to watch all these guys like grow up and adult now in their
Yeah.
in their late
And you're
30s.
young and you have the energy to keep up with them.
Yeah.
So, okay. Heck yeah. So one of the things, Mike, and you and ever before I even really knew you, I'd kind of heard your story, and it's been very inspiring for, I know, me and lots of other people. And something I wanted to do in this episode is honor your son, Cash. There's a whole story behind that. And so would you be open to sharing kind of, I mean, how many kids you have now and what the story was around Cash and kind of the legacy that has brought into fruition?
Yeah, I love talking about Cash. Um, so I have 4 children. I have Colton, Cash, Catherine, and Rebel Hawk are my 4 kids. The first 2 are boys. The second 2 are girls. And so we had Colton in 2004. And then in 2007, we bought our first house. We got married, and we conceived Cashy. And that was during the elk rut of 2007. And so I spent I think $4,000 in gas in '07 hunting and driving back and forth from Missoula to all my hunting areas because Callie wanted to make a baby, and there's only one way to make a baby. And so and it was during hunting season. So I was like hunting, and then she'd call me and be like, "You gotta get home," and I'd drive home, and so
That's like a man's best life.
yeah, it was a great year. We bought a house, got married, made this human, and like with Colton was a surprise, and with Cashy, he was planned. And there's honestly, in my 39 years on this earth, there's nothing more exciting than us, when your spouse wants to make a baby. And so with Cashy, we planned him. He was born in 2008. And so you figure '08, I was selling cars still. I like between when Colton was born, I was working at the lumber mill in Missoula, Montana in '04, Roseburg Mill. I worked 4-hour shifts. No, I worked 12-hour shifts, 4 on, 4 off. And it was just rotating. And so I quickly realized in '04 when I had that job that it was definitely not something that I wanted to pursue long term, even though if you go back to '04, working at the mill was a big deal. For it still is for a lot of people to get an opportunity to work somewhere that has steady pay, benefits, all this stuff. And at the same time, it didn't resonate well with me on who I was, and like the thought of working there forever kind of bummed me out. So I was only there for about 2 years, and then I transferred into framing houses, and we hit the end of the framing boom. And then after the framing boom, went back into selling cars. So that was like '08. I was back into selling cars, and it was right during the Great Recession. GMAC was failing. It was a wild time again to be in business, and that's the year Cashy was born. And so we kind of struggled '08, '09, just trying to keep the car lots going and compete with 0% financing, cash for clunkers. There's all this stuff. And then at the same time, we were going from a hard book NADA era to people were showing up to the car lots with smartphones and able to have information available at hand that affected our cells. And so it was just like this change in technology and everything. And we kind of went through '08, 2009, 2010 is when our journey drastically changed. Cash was about 18, 19 months old, and he started getting sick. And we went back and forth to different doctors for about 90 days until what they thought was mono. Got diagnosed as a stage 4, like 4-centimeter tumor that was wrapped around his optic nerve, and it was inoperable, and it was highly aggressive and part of the blue cell cancer group. And that's when we started fighting cancer as a family. So 2010, it was May 1st or 2nd of 2010 is when he was diagnosed. And Callie and him life flighted to Salt Lake, and Colton and I went home and gathered up, some clothes and belongings. And we drove all the way to Salt Lake City that night. And that's when the Hyde family started the journey of battling pediatric cancer with our son. And so it was a wild ride for us. We were young. I was in my late 20s,
Yep.
and Colton was 4 years old, 4.5 years old, and we like didn't know what was in store ahead of us, and it was a wild ride.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I mean, how did your family or the community come around you to support you? I know that's something you're passionate about now, but was that something that was helping you through at that time and inspired you to do it now, or what? Who, I guess, how did you take that battle in a more simple way?
I like we addressed the battle itself a few different ways. One was with positivity, and so the way that I looked at every day of fighting cancer with Cash was an opportunity that for some reason was granted to myself and our family. And so I did my best to embrace all my conversations I was having with either different families or doctors. For some reason, I was destined to be there at that exact moment, um, to fight cancer with Cash and have some sort of
Mhm.
impact on others around me. And so what going through that journey, the first thing that happened was Missoula and all of our friends and family pulled together, and they threw several fundraisers for us in 2010, which gave us the ability to not work as we were out of state at Primary Children's Hospital, and we didn't lose anything. Like our mortgage was paid, we had money in our pockets. We had,
Mhm.
like, you figure we spent a lot of money in 2010, like
Yeah.
eating food and
Yep.
traveling back and forth from either the hospital to Montana or to different areas in Utah, as like we have family there, and Cash was at the hospital full time. However, we still had this healthy sibling, like his brother Colton, that
Yeah.
still needed to have some sort of a childhood throughout it. So Callie and I quickly decided that we would split the shift on a 24-hour cycle. One of us would stay with Cash, and the other one would go with Colton and stay
Okay.
the night at my grandma's house and take Colton and do some. And so it became this routine of one of us would be with Colton for 24 hours, one of us would be with Cash, and then we would switch. And that's kind
Yeah.
of how we addressed the initial push of 2010 fighting cancer with him.
Yeah.
And the amount of support that we had from our community allowed us to not only be able to take care of ourselves, it allowed us to be able to help other families that were there. Like there was families sleeping on the floor. We were fortunate enough that we were able to bring our hunting trailer down and park it in the alley of the hospital. So we had a spot for us to go that was ours, even though like the Ronald McDonald House was available, it was about 2 miles down the road, and we
Mhm.
wanted to be right there, boots on the ground. And
Yeah.
so by us being able to park our trailer there, we had a spot to go. Other families were camped out on the floor, like it was,
Really.
or they didn't have money to eat out of the cafeteria, and so we were able to
Man.
help other families. And it was probably about 3 months into Cashy's battle. When we first got there, he was blind, and as he started
Okay.
getting chemo, the tumor started shrinking, and he got his eyesight back, and
Mm.
all of his hair fell out, and so he was just this bald little like 20-month-year-old little kid, and he was so dang cute, and he had a
Yeah.
huge scar on his head because they had to go in and try and get a biopsy of the tumor. And
Yep.
so he had a huge scar on his head, and everyone that seen him, they would just light up when they seen him. And he loved these little Tykes cars, and
Okay.
there wasn't enough of these cars at the hospital, so parents were hiding them and all this stuff. And we ended up calling home and having our family mail us down a bunch of stickers, and we went and bought our own little Tykes car for him, and we decked it out with all these stickers. And I took a IV pole off of one of the wheelchairs and brought it
Uh-huh.
to my grandpa's workshop, and we mounted this IV pole to this little Tykes car, and
Yep.
that's when we made our first reggae runner. And it was such a hit. We would be wheeling around the hospital with Cash, and he'd have bags hanging off the IV pole, and when someone seen him, it would
Yeah.
light them up. And that's when I realized that we had this ability to fight cancer with smiles. And I think back to the first day that we were at the hospital. Cash is in surgery, and we're sitting there, and this little kid came by, a little bald head, and I seen him. And when I seen him, it gave me hope that if this little kid could handle it, that Cash could handle it too. And
Hmm.
so what we don't realize is in our worst moments, there are other people that we're positively impacting, because through our challenges, when they see us face them head on, it allows them to take ownership in the fact that they can do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so when we really started thinking about what we could do through that year, I was like, man, I want to start a foundation. I want to financially assist families fighting cancer the way families are helping us. And I want
Yeah.
to fight cancer with smiles by delivering reggae runners to all these children's hospitals. And so when we got home in 2011, that's when we launched the Cash Hyde Foundation. And we started going out and building out reggae runners and dropping them off all over the US. And Cash was in remission. And so we were in California. Um, we basically dropped reggae runners off in about a 3 year
Qu-
period. We dropped them off.
What's a reggae runner?
A
I've
reggae runner
Yeah.
is a customized little Tykes car. So if you know
Okay.
the little red and yellow little Tykes cars.
Yeah, with like the handlebars, and
No, they
they're
don't
like
have
the
handlebars. They
plastic,
kind of like
or
a little dome. It was like the number one sold car in
oh,
1992.
yep, with the like yellow roof,
Yep.
right? Okay, yep. Yep, I know that.
And so we started just donating. We started building those out and donating them all over the US. We would travel, we'd build out 6 or 7 runners, and we would dip out. And so we that was what our foundation did at first. And then when Cashy relapsed, we ended up fighting cancer again at the end of 2011 into 2012. And
Mhm.
so when we were in California that year doing that, we were basically dropping reggae runners off and living out of the Ronald McDonald House down there. It was like right end of November through like pretty much mid February till we came home. So we spent
Yeah.
about 90 to 120 days down in Loma Linda, California, doing proton radiation and just kind of living day to day. You know, when that's the gift, I guess, of terminal illness, is you look at every day differently than you do when everyone's healthy and everything's fine,
Yep.
because you have a there's a timeline, and
Yeah.
we don't have control over it. And so we really just spent every day. He'd go do chemo or radiation, and then we would get him out and we would go somewhere, and Cash would he was just such a trooper. Like he allowed us the opportunity, even while he was sick, to go out and have experiences that we wouldn't have had we not been in that predicament. And so
Yeah.
we battled cancer in 2010, 2011, and then in 2012 he was in remission for about 3 months, 4 months, and then his cancer came back the third time. And at that point, he had done high dose chemo, bone marrow transplants, stem cell rescue, and then he had done proton radiation. And so those are your two like best chances with his cancer. And so on the third battle, it was more of a quality of life. And Cash was 4.5 at that point in time, and he was old enough to say that he didn't want any more pokes. And so at that time, like as his parents, like we just did the best we could to make him comfortable. And
Yeah.
he ended up passing away November 14th, 2012 at home. I was actually holding him, and that's when we experienced like the greatest loss that you can imagine as a parent. It was end of 2012.
Yeah. I can imagine. I didn't know I'm getting tears, like the that he didn't want any more pokes. Yeah, I can't imagine like what was going on in his mind on what was happening on with this whole scenario. Obviously he kind of grew up with it, but how much of it did he really comprehend?
I don't know, and looking back on it, like you can, like, I have pictures of Cash, and you can look into his eyes. He was definitely wiser than I was, even though he was just this little dude going
Yeah.
through this amazing battle. And so, like, he was a 4.5-year-old. He couldn't talk all that well because
Yeah.
of where the tumor was and the treatments. However, he had done above and beyond what any adult could do going through something like that. and
Yeah.
and as much as I loved him as a parent and as a human being, like, I knew that it was selfish for me to want to keep him here anymore,
Yeah.
knowing what he had to go through to be here. And so, like, when you truly love someone that much, like, the the honorable thing to do is to give them that peace. And so,
Hmm.
like, it was a journey. Like, when I think about just the journey of allowing Cash peace, that was,
Yeah.
because if I had any say over it, I'd still be taking care of him right now.
Yeah.
I'd gladly be his caregiver still today. If I could have traded spots with him, I would have hands down traded spots with him so he could be here experiencing, how amazing, Montana is.
Hmm.
And that's not the way that, it works. And so
Yeah.
it was a journey in learning how to let something go that you don't want to. And
Yeah.
and and then how do you deal with the the aftermath? Because so
Yeah.
much of our life was wrapped around being his caregiver. Our routine for 2.5 years, I was his caregiver. And
Yeah.
so when you wake up that next day and there's nobody there that for you to take care of besides yourself and your healthy siblings, it's a whole whirlwind of emotion and change and habit, and so 2012, at the end of the year, it was a rough year. We lost Cash,
Yeah.
right before the holidays. So it was definitely a sad holiday. And then right after that, we end up losing our home and all of our cars, because the first year we had so much support. Like, we had so
Yeah.
much support. The second year, we had a lot of support. We didn't lose anything. On the third battle, we didn't have the support that we had previously.
Yeah.
And it is because it had been going on for 3 years,
Hmm.
and so when our third battle came, when we were doing alternative medicines and stuff that insurance doesn't cover, like, we had to make these choices. Like, do we make the mortgage payment, or do we get this medicine that might make him comfortable or might save him? And so
Yeah.
we ended up just putting all of our finances and everything into battling cancer with Cash in 2012. And so when he passed away, we were in this position where we lost him, and then, like, we were losing our house, we were losing our cars. And in 2013, we end up going to a rental and foreclosing on the house. Vehicles got repossessed, and basically down to, like, gym bags. And
Yeah.
that's when we, like, pretty much hit rock bottom, I would say. And
Yeah.
and looking back on it now, rock bottom, it wasn't that bad. Like, the only thing that sucked was losing Cash. The house, the
Yeah.
cars, all the other stuff, it didn't even matter. Like,
Hmm.
so I hear people, like, even like during COVID, like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna lose the house," and I'm like, "Yeah, but, like, honestly, you're gonna be all right. Everybody's good. Everybody's
Yeah.
healthy. Like, we can get through anything. We just, like, everything's replaceable, besides our time with our loved ones. Like, that's not replaceable.
Yeah.
That is as a finite amount of time.
Yeah.
And so, we got to cherish everything that we can as we move, like, through our day to day.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said. I love what you said there about how when we hit rock bottom, that it wasn't that bad. And I think and give me your thoughts, but I think you say that because it's like when people think of rock bottom, it's losing all the materialistic things.
Yeah.
And then when you lose all that, you look around and you're like, what do you have? And at the core, like, I believe God created us for relationship, and we have awesome families that we get to be a part of. And I mean, you look at so many third world countries like America, we've got it pretty good.
Yeah.
And so when you come to the realization of just being grateful that we have plumbing and warm water to shower in, like, what more do you need?
And
So,
and we have our friends and family, and even in your worst moment, it's when you get to cash all of your good deeds in. What's funny is in 2010, when we were like right before Cash got sick, we were shutting our car lot down, and I mean it was like this struggle trying
mhm,
to get to success, and it's like every time I almost got to success, it was like I got shut down,
mhm,
and so I was kind of bitter. And when
yeah,
when I found out that Cash had cancer, it was it was just this eye opening like experience. And then all the people that I thought had forgotten about who I am as a human and all the things that I had done up to that point, it all came full circle back to me, and I never had to ask for help. In
yeah,
2010, I didn't have to call anyone and say, will you please help me? Because I probably had been too stubborn and proud to do that. And I didn't have
mhm,
to because of the amazing community that we have here in Western Montana, all of our
yep,
friends and family, and the way that they all poured into us. I'm I can never say thank you enough. And that's why when we came home from our first battle, we were passionate about setting up the Cash Hyde Foundation.
yeah,
I had no idea how hard it would be to run a nonprofit, all the red tape you have to go through to get a 501c3, and
mhm,
all of the blood, sweat, tears, and energy that goes in to throw in an event, and getting people to come and support your cause, and be able to help other families. Like it's
yep,
a lot. And there's days where I'm like, man, like did I bite off more than I can chew? And then I think back on like Cash, and he never gave up, and he handled it. And so we fight through the push of continuing to help families with the foundation, and and our Sportsmen's Against Cancer banquets each year have gotten just bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where like this will be our last year we can do the event at Karis Park, because we've about out like set the amount of people that you can stack in
really,
that park. And so we're going to find a new venue in
yeah.
2024. So we're excited about that.
Congratulations. How many people are usually coming to that event?
The last, so 2019 we had over 400 people there, and we didn't do it 2020 or 2021, obviously,
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
of you know COVID-19. However, 2022 was our fifth annual event,
mhm,
and we had over 500 people there.
wow,
So, like, I mean, it's a lot of fun. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of support from everybody, and it's probably one of the most amazing like experiences that you can get around when you get around philanthropy. The people that actually show up to those type of events are special
yep,
people,
yep,
and you figure anyone that takes time out of their day to go help random people that they don't even know who, they don't care who, they just care why. And when
yep,
you see that come out, like it, it's a humbling experience.
yeah, absolutely. And what is it, for the listeners who don't know, what is it that the Cash Hyde Foundation focuses on?
So our mission has changed through the years. What we initially started out financially assisting families, spreading pediatric cancer awareness, and building reggae runners and fighting cancer with smiles. What we found was in about 2014, about 2 years after Cash had passed away, it was harder for us to raise money than it had ever been.
Mm,
Um, and it wasn't scalable for us to go out across the US and build out these reggae runners, and it wasn't something that I felt confident in assigning to random people that I didn't know. Because we had
Yep.
people that say, "Oh, we'll do that over here." Well, it's a different quality control. They're going to put our name on it, and it wasn't scalable. So in 2015, before I got into real estate, I was in California for about 2 years. Um, Ironically, like, so we lost our house in 2013. We found a rental, and we were in this rental for about 8 months, 10 months, somewhere in there. And the landlord
Mhm.
sent us a letter and said, "Hey, I need my house back," basically. And
Oh,
Callie was like 10 months. No, she was like 8.5 months pregnant with Rebel, our youngest girl at
man.
the time. So
Yeah.
right during like her final weeks of pregnancy, we were literally emptying our rental into a storage unit, and we didn't know where to go. And so she, like, when she had Rebel at the hospital, it was good because
Yeah.
I didn't really even have a bed set up at that time for her. So it, it worked out really slick for her to have a spot to go. And
Yeah.
and so after that, we were like, "Hey, I had this calling to go to California so we could try it and do our best to help more families get safe access to medicine." And so we
Mhm.
ended up heading to California with a pop-up camper, three kids. One was only like 10 days old, and we went to California, and we were down there for all of 2014 and most of 2015, helping families and living in probably one of the most wild experiences, that, looking back on it, that I could have
Yeah.
ever brought my family into. However, it was this journey that I was set on with Cash, and I wanted to see it through. And
Yeah.
so it was late 2015. I decided, you know what, like, I think I'm gonna come back to Montana. And because again, I, like, being there, I couldn't do what I wanted to at the foundation,
Mhm.
and I couldn't even take care of my family at that point in time because
Yeah.
of work and travel. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go home, and I'm gonna get my real estate license, and I'm going to go put myself around a different group of people that can help us bring this foundation to a whole new level. And so I came home, and I was up hunting up by Georgetown Lake, and I was thinking, like, maybe I should just shut the foundation down. We had about $1,000 in the foundation account, and
Mhm.
maybe $1,200, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, gosh, maybe it'd just be easier if I just shut the foundation down and call it quits, and I'll just go and focus on my kids and my family. And I was hunting, thinking, kind of praying about it, and I had this vision of Sportsmen's Against Cancer banquet, and it was the most amazing, like, banquet I could imagine. There was all these people there, and we were raffling off a gun and a bow and all this stuff, and we were giving a kid with cancer a hunt, and it was like this the most
Yeah.
amazing thing. And I was like, I don't need to shut the foundation down. I need to change direction of what our foundation's doing now. And so I
Okay.
came out the mountain, and I came to the family, and I'm like, "Hey guys, I got this idea. We're not going to shut the foundation down. We're going to launch this Sportsmen's Against Cancer banquet, and it's going to be amazing." And everybody kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And they're like, "Mike, you have $1,000. How are you going to put on this amazing banquet with $1,000?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "I don't know. However, I think I can do it, and I'm going to do it." And I go, "I can start selling raffle tickets right now, and I don't necessarily need to have the items. I just got to know what I'm going to give away." And so
Yeah.
from that point forward, I got my real estate license. I started with Keller Williams, and I went to my first bold, and we launched our first Sportsmen's Against Cancer banquet in 2016. I closed on my first house like 3 weeks before the event, and
Mhm.
so I was able to buy the raffle tickets, or buy the raffle items that we were selling the tickets to. And we sold VIP tables, and
Yeah.
we gave a hunt away to this kid named Caden Puccinelli out of Butte, Montana. He was 12 at the time. So I
Okay.
promised this kid this elk hunt, and I didn't actually know where we were going to get this kid a hunt at. I just was like, I promised it to him. And so I'm in bold, and I'm using all the bold calling, like, for the foundation. And so I'm calling all of the Outfitter and Guides Association contact list. We're mailing letters. We're literally getting told. I got told no by 300 and some outfitters. Like, nope. Like, maybe next year we'll help your event out because we'd never done it before.
Wow.
So you're going to
Yeah.
people, you're trying to say, hey, help us do this event that we've never done before. It's going to be amazing. And we got told no and shut down. We're 2 weeks before the event. And I'm like, I've called everybody besides the president of the Montana Outdoor and Guides Association, Mac Minard. And I'm like, well, I've called everybody, but I might as well get told no by Mac too. And
Yeah.
so I call Mac up and I tell Mac what we're doing. And Mac's like, wait a minute. He's like, you guys are giving away a hunt for a kid with cancer? And I was like, yes, sir. And he's like, well, you know what we do, don't we? Don't you? And I was like, no. He's like, well, we have Big Hearts Under the Big Sky, and we give away hunts to kids with terminal illness. He goes, however, we don't have any kids to give a hunt to. You got a kid? And I was like, yeah, we
No
got a
way.
kid. And so literally, like with less than a week before the event, we get this amazing hunt given to us by Russ Kipp, who owned Montana High Country
Yeah.
and tours down in Polaris, Montana. And
Yeah.
and so we end up doing the banquet, giving Caden the hunt, and that's when we changed what we did as a foundation. And so since 2016, we financially assist families fighting cancer. We still spread pediatric cancer awareness, and
Yep.
we do hunt grants, fish grants, and snowmobile grants for families fighting cancer. And we send their whole family on the most amazing hunt, fish, float trip packages that you can, so that even though they're battling terminal illness with their child, it gives us and them the ability to get outside of that and experience Montana. The healthy siblings can go have fun. The sick kids can have as much fun as they can tolerate and rest,
Hmm.
and the parents can have a retreat and kind of just take a moment to reflect and even just nap. Like when you
Yeah.
think about how tired most parents are in general, let alone a parent with a child with a terminal illness, a lot of them just want to go to bed and know that everything's okay. And so
Yep.
just giving families that peace and that time is our main focus now as a foundation. And we are excitedly working on raising funds for the Cash Hyde Wellness Center, which is going to be at the Montana High Country location down in Polaris, Montana. And so,
Really.
yeah, it's like I tell everyone, like Cash sent me there. Like I didn't like Cash like has literally guided me the last 10 years, even though he was a child that couldn't really speak. He's given me more direction in that short time, and even after he's passed, continues to like guide us and bring us to where we're supposed to be.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I want to touch on that for a second because, so, I mean, you embody several of the traits in my acronym for the word impact. And on P, I have philanthropic. And another one on P that I think absolutely adheres with you is perseverance. Like thinking about if 320 calls, did you say that you made? And you got told no, no, no. And finally you made that one more. And he's like, we don't have anyone for this year. Like, tell me that's not divine intervention.
It's
That is so insane.
it's 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 literally how we built our business is through perseverance.
Yep.
You figure in my journey with KW and up to now running our top producing team here at our market center, like it didn't happen overnight, and it happened by persevering through all of the no's, all of the challenges, and just continuing to see where I can have value and add purpose. And as
Hmm.
long as I feel like I'm adding value and I have a purpose, that I'm excited to get up every day. And
Yeah.
so like that's what I enjoy about the journey that we're on now is every day I'm excited to get up and go out and have an impact on our clients, on our team, and on other agents that are literally following us as we pave the way into the new future of selling real estate with Keller Williams and
Yep.
all the technology that's out there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and since we talked about perseverance and kind of talked about business a little bit, one of the mantras within Keller Williams is that the purpose of business is to fund a perfect life. And the cool part is that looks different for everybody what that perfect life is. Some people they need to make, 40 grand a year and then they're fine. And others want to make millions of dollars to then donate it to other people. And there's people on all ends of the spectrum who are making an impact on lots of people, and a perseverance story. Obviously, you have several of them throughout your life, but one that I love, I would like you to share, is this story where, I mean, you were working on some things in your business and you ended up bedridden for a while. And that was kind of a pivotal moment for you. I'd love if you could share that with me.
Yeah. No, so when I first got into real estate, 2016, I I didn't have a lot of resources, and so I quickly fell into this routine of cold calling and door knocking for sell by owners and expireds, and that's how I grew my business for 2016 and 2017. Well, 2017 was a challenging year. One where we were living at up in Lolo, we had the Lolo Peak fire that took off. I think it was like July 13th or some
Hmm.
2017. And where we were living at the time was up on the end of Mormon Creek Road. And we were at the end of the road. We had 100 and some acres there that we were going to lease to own from this really cool family. And we were right on the edge of the wilderness up there off of Carlton Ridge and Lolo Peak.
Hmm.
And so this fire took off. So I ended up going from cold calling in June and July to fighting fire pretty much the end of July all the way through like the end of August. Like in our
Really?
most of our property got burnt up. It was intense, dude. Like so I took
Man.
like 60 days off of work to like fight fire and do all this crazy. We had to get evacuated and like, I mean, we had
Yeah.
fire crews camped out in our front yard. It was wild. And so then right after that, it was November. I ended up breaking my back in a hunting accident, unloading my four wheeler,
Yeah.
and so I ended up literally on timeout. And divine
Yeah.
intervention, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, like sometimes when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're gonna learn today. And so I ended up learning the hard way at the end of 2017 that the way I had been running my business wasn't very purposeful, and it
Mm.
wasn't scalable, and I ended up messing up and hurting myself and not being able to go to work. And so we
Mhm.
went from a firefighting season to Mike's broke his back, and so for 10 weeks, I was put on bed rest where I had to basically lay in bed all day with this back brace on. I could still like move my arms and do stuff, but I couldn't really walk or do anything. And so I
Yeah.
ended up putting my headset on and start making calls and setting appointments that I couldn't go to. So that I quickly realized that like if I wasn't able to go to an appointment, then I was out of business. So
Yeah.
I had my son bring me all my notebooks, and I went through all of my notebooks and all of my leads that I had in all these different notebooks. As I called them, they had all bought and sold real estate, not with me because I didn't follow up,
Yep.
and because I was fighting fire and doing whatever else. And so I added it up, and I had lost about 150,000 in commission in 2017 due to lack of follow up. Just not even following up.
Mhm.
So then that hurt, and so I'm sitting there stewing. I'm like, well, I guess I better like call my database that they talk about. And so I didn't have a database, and I started putting my database together. And the database thing was hard for me because I know everybody in Missoula and everybody knows me better because of our story with Cash.
Yeah.
And after he passed away, it was I didn't I didn't want to show my face. It was
Yeah.
just like losing at him and losing the home and losing everything. It was embarrassing. It was humbling. All the generosity that got put towards our family, um, and then not being able to pay it forward. It felt like, and
Yeah.
then and then I'm going to call and ask for business. It just didn't resonate with me at the time. I couldn't find myself picking up and calling people that I should have called and said thank you to, you know, that I didn't. And so
Yeah.
it was like this challenge that I had to get around and I didn't know how to. So 2017, when I'm doing this activity, I put my database together. I put my top 100. I start calling people. And that's when I realized that some of my closest friends and family had bought and sold real estate and not with me. And it was my fault because I hadn't picked up the phone and made the calls that I was supposed to make. And so
Yeah.
when I added it all up in 2017, I fought fire, I broke my back, and I lost 200 and about $40,000 in GCI, and I made more money that year than I'd ever made, and it was about I think $60,000. So even though
Yeah.
I'd sucked terribly bad and did everything wrong, I still made a good amount of money for where I was at that time. And it was eye opening on how much money I had left on the table. And it wasn't that I left money on the table, it's that I could have provided more for the people around me had I been more
Yeah.
purposeful about what I was doing. And so I was at this junction in my career in real estate that I was this close to going out of business.
Yeah.
And if I didn't change direction rapidly quick, I was going to be finding a new career. And I
Yeah.
called Eric Schweitzer out of Helena, and who's been a great mentor to me over the years as I've gone through this journey with KW. And
Yeah.
I call Eric Schweitzer up. He's the OP um, up at KW Capital, and I'm like, Eric, I'm like, man, I'm like, I'm hurt. I'm hurt. I'm broke, and I think I need to sell my family reunion ticket. Do you know, is anybody at your market center looking to go to family reunion? I probably need to sell my ticket, basically. And
Yeah. Family
Eric,
reunion is a conference for people listening. Sorry. Go on.
oh, so I asked Eric, like, hey, do you know anybody they're looking to buy this family reunion ticket? I probably can't go, basically, because I'm broke and hurt.
Yeah.
And Eric tells me he's just nonchalantly, he's just like, gosh, Mike, sounds like you really need to go to a family reunion and sharpen your sword. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh man, like I didn't want to hear that. And I hung up with them and I was kind of like offended and a little butthurt about it. And I'm sitting there stewing on it. And it's exactly what I needed to hear at that moment
Yeah.
because I was like, I feel like when we're most challenged and almost ready to stop is when we're really the closest to achieving greatness if we
Mhm.
push through. And at that moment, like Eric could have told me, yeah, Mike, I could find someone to help buy that ticket for you and you stay home. However, as a friend and colleague, he knew that would be detrimental to my business. And so
Yep.
even though he knew it was going to offend me or not feel good, but he told me what I needed to hear in that moment. And
Yeah.
I ended up going to the family reunion that year. That's when Gary announced that we were in this technology um, business now in the fourth industrial revolution, and he laid out this whole plan in front of us in 2018, and it was exciting. And I walked out of there and my OP looked at me and was like, hey, do you want to take on the role as the tech ambassador for our market center? We can't pay you, however we need to give someone the designation. And I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I'll take it. And that's really where my real estate career started, is in 2018,
Yeah.
as I actually started looking at how to be a business owner and how do I use technology to do all the fundamental stuff that we know works in real estate.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and that makes sense. And I want to fill in one of the blanks for people who don't know. And one of the reasons I know that I love real estate, being an extrovert, and I'm sure it's very similar for you. But he kept saying database, and database is basically a fancy way of like contact list. And so it's all the people you know, because no matter what business you're in, people do business with somebody that they like, know, and trust. And In real estate, it's not like somebody's just like, hey, Mike, let me call and sell your house, because it's an emotional and a big decision. So people usually go with the first person they see on that website that starts with a Z or something else. And so as agents, we have the opportunity to just be friends with people. And if the opportunity comes up where we can help them, we can. And so when you got purposeful, and like you said, like you didn't want to put your face out in the public after losing Cashy and everything, and you didn't call and thank all the people. And I'm sure now, after you got intentional, put a database together, that you've probably been able to rekindle and express gratitude and all of that with so many relationships that that could have been a thriving relationship, but they were stagnant because you weren't doing anything about it.
Exactly. No, and so like when I look at like one of the biggest gifts that real estate has given me is the ability to rebuild relationships and just be a better friend. We
Yeah.
we get so busy in our day to day lives that we don't want to bother people, and and at the same time, it like people are excited to hear from us, and our
Yeah.
friends truly do care about us, and so one of the biggest impacts I have now, I feel, in my journey in real estate and being a business owner, is the ability to reach out and build relationships and help people no matter what business they're in,
Yep.
um, map out the steps of success, because success leaves clues no matter what business you're in. And if you can look at the clues and build off of that, then you can quickly help people realize their full potential and what they're doing, and
Yeah.
make it so that we can all work to live and not live to work.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and saying work to live, not live to work. Like I had mentioned earlier, one of the mantras that is within Keller Williams and can be anywhere, honestly, is the purpose of business is to fund a perfect life, whatever that looks like for someone. And you said in 2017 or prior to that that you really didn't have a purpose in your business, and now you obviously do. So dive into a little bit. What is the more of the driving purpose that gets Mike up every single day to continue to go and succeed and help people?
Well, I have three children that are still here on this earth that I am responsible for, right? And I
Yep.
want to make sure that I can set them up for success as they move through their life. So my children and family are one of my biggest motivators that keep me inspired to do what I do. On top of that, our focus with the Cash Hyde Wellness Center, I know that in order to bring that to reality, that I need to generate a large amount of income in order to see that through. And
Yeah.
so I have some pretty big whys that keep me getting up and being purposeful. And with it, as I went, one of my biggest fears as I went from an independent agent into running a team was having to be responsible for other people's financial outcome. and
Mm.
and and now that I've taken on that responsibility, and we have so many families that are affected positively as we conduct day-to-day business, because we're able to help them provide for their families, it's another reason for us to get out and be purposeful about what we're doing, because it's more than just the Hyde family that's dependent on us conducting business. and
Hmm.
and with our team the way we're set up now, we're a remote team, and our whole back end is through Cyberbacker Montana, which is based out of the Philippines. And so we are helping change lives through real estate here in the United States and all the way across the ocean in the Philippines, as we
Yeah.
we help all of our team there live big lives. And
Yeah.
every Friday we do our Win Friday is what it's called. And
Okay.
what's super just impactful as we listen to everybody share their wins for the week. Like when you hear the people on your team say that like their win is being able to take their immediate family out to dinner, or help buy their parents a new apartment,
Hmm.
like that's huge. And
Yeah.
so when you get to hear how like we're selling houses up here, and we're able to help families all over Western Montana, and we're helping families all the way across the ocean in the Philippines too. And so
Hmm.
again, it's just another reason to get up and make an impact as we're continuing to live our life by design, and again, work to live, not live to work.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I resonate with that a lot. I like I said, I don't have a family. I do want one day, and I'm very involved with my church and some other nonprofits and stuff. And I know that if I've been gifted to be successful, it's selfish of me not to go out and realize that and attain it to go and help other people.
Well, yeah, when you think about it, like for me, I think about all the little kids that are fighting cancer right now. The reality of it is each day, I think it's right around 7 kids are diagnosed with cancer, and I have to look at the numbers. It's been a minute since I've looked at it, but each day,
Too
several
many.
children either are diagnosed with cancer or pass away from the complications of battling cancer. And so when
Hmm.
we wake up, whether we're broke as a joke, if we have our health and we have the ability to get out and bust a move, we owe it to everybody that can't do that to get out and do it. And that's how I look at it. Whether it's go for a hike,
100%.
hop on a snowmobile and go for a rip, go to work and pound out 8 hours of work or something, like it's the least that we can do for being given the opportunity to wake up for another day. Like
Yep.
we owe it to everyone to do that.
Yeah. 100%. So I know, speaking of all that, I know a guy like you is super busy. And so I appreciate your time and coming on, having a conversation. One of the last things that I wanted to ask you, and one thing in that whole story with Cashy and how that all went about, that really, I guess, inspired me and encouraged me, was the fact he's like, he can be going through a tough time and like he can smile, and that goes out and affects other people. Like, I grew up very introverted, and when I started to learn how much more fun I could have just be learning to be an extrovert, and I can make other people smile, that's when life got really fun. And so when you were like, he would just go around and he was making other people smile, how excited that got you to then go do all that stuff with the reggae runners. I think that was awesome. So I just wanted to share that with you. But if, as we wrap up here, from Cashy, if there was one lesson that he taught you in that whole time that myself and you and the listeners can use in their life each and every day to make the world a better place, what would that lesson be?
The biggest lesson is to slow down and to appreciate what we have in the moment, because we don't know how quick the moment can change.
Mm.
When I look back, like we all have regrets, right? And
Yeah.
there was days where before Cash got sick, he wanted me to stop what I was doing and color or play for a second, and I was too busy. And
Yeah.
I always thought that I would get that chance tomorrow or the next day to do that, and that's not a guarantee that we have. And so I think my
Yeah.
biggest lesson with Cash is to really truly let people know that you love them, spend time with the people you care about, and that's why it's so important for us to go out and be successful and build big lives, is not for ourselves, it's for all the people around us that we care about, and all the
Hmm.
experiences and memories that we can create if we have the ability financially to do so. And so that's my biggest lesson from Cash.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. Living and appreciating each and every moment. I love that. That make that makes me think I don't want to go too deep, but like thinking about like relationships and how opposites attract. I don't know how you and Kylie's relationship is, but my wife and I are completely different. And this morning, uh, like I'm go, go, go all the time. And when we're filming this, it's February 10th. So Valentine's Day is on a Tuesday here this next week. And I asked Kendra this morning, because we do date nights on Friday. I said, hey, honey, do you want to celebrate Valentine's Day this evening and go to dinner somewhere, something like that? Because Tuesday, one, it is a weeknight. Don't want to be out super late, whatever. More flexible on a Friday. She's like, that's so much to prepare for. And like, there's so much to mentally prepare for. And I laughed at first, and I'm like, what do you mean? What does that even mean first?
Don't overthink
But
tacos, okay? Valentine tacos are easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, there's a new Mexican restaurant here in Bozeman. When you come to Bozeman next, let's go. It's called like Modern Mexican Bozeman or something. We should go grab that.
Hey, speaking of which, do you guys got any VRBOs out there during Montana camp? I probably need to get a VRBO.
Yeah, so I know Kyler, my business partner. Kyler has a VRBO, and then they're doing a hotel block thing.
Is this VRBO still available for that date?
I would go and check. Yeah, I would go and check that for sure, because it's a nice one.
Cool. All right, we'll hit him up.
Yeah, it's funny. It if you're listening and don't know, and I'll get back to what I was saying, but the other day, Montana Camp is a small conference for real estate that we do here every year, and it's in Bozeman this year for the first time. And Kyler lives here in Bozeman. The other day, I'm right over there working, and he's gonna hate that I even mentioned this, but he's over there working, and he just like said something derogatory to himself. He's like, I'm being such an idiot. Like, he went on to the Montana Camp website, went to go book a hotel room, only to realize that it's in Bozeman, and he lives in Bozeman.
Did he book his VRBO then? No.
No, he didn't, but he was looking at doing a hotel block, and I'm like, you're, man. So that was funny. But yeah, like I was saying, is like for me, I love that you say that, because 1000%, like the biggest thing that I've learned in marriage is, like, before I got married, I wanted somebody who was exactly like me, and we would go conquer the world, but then I would never slow down to smell the roses. And so what I've been learning with my wife is to slow down a little bit. And the fact that, like, one Valentine's Day, like, literally I, asterisk, couldn't care less about it, and I just want to go and work and do things and see people, to like realize, like, slow down and just to appreciate the now. And I can't imagine how much, like you said, with the terminal illness, how much value each and every, not only day, but minute and moment has. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I hope you guys have a great day and good weekend. And I'll see. Are you guys going to family reunion or?
Yeah, Kyler will be at family reunion. I actually spent all of my money that I had set aside on all this podcast stuff that I have, so I can't afford it. But next year I will definitely be there.
Well, I'm glad you got your studio set up. It looks good. Yeah,
I appreciate it. I'm learning one thing before I let you go. You'll laugh at me, because I was, the last podcast I did with my buddy Logan Manzanera, is a good real estate investor. I realized I wasn't recording from this 4K camera. I was filming from my laptop, and it was okay. So I'm learning like a pilot. You have this checklist of everything that you do before you go down and film. And I sat down earlier, and I was doing an audio test, and I was like, what is going on? And I couldn't figure it out. And I was looking at the camera. I realized I bumped a button, because there's all kinds of different like things you do on this. Anyways, I'm learning about it all. I appreciate you so much, Mike, for coming on the episode today. I can't wait to get this stuff edited into the long YouTube, Spotify, Apple, everywhere you listen to podcasts, so it can get out and encourage some people who need to learn how they can live appreciate their moments every day.
Awesome, bro. You have a good weekend.
Cool. Yeah, you too. We'll see you later.